The fate of these 9 camp counselors will soon be in our very hands, and here to break down what we can expect come June 10th is none other than the creative director for the Quarry, Will Boyles. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Like, I'm super excited for this game, and I know a lot of horror enthusiasts that are as well. Now, you've been working on the Dark Pictures anthology for a few years now. What have you learned from making these bite-sized horror stories, and how have they informed the development of the Quarry?
Well, so I haven't personally been working on them, but the studio, Supermassive Games, has been, obviously, like you say, has been working on them for a few years. We started off with Until Dawn. We had no idea what we were doing in those days. We were kind of putting it together in various different ways. We kind of knew what we wanted to get from it, but it was all very much kind of experimental as far as the development was concerned, because we had nothing to go by. Having done that, and like you say, working on the Dark Pictures, we've developed a whole bunch of ways to kind of optimize storytelling in a branching narrative. So we've kind of developed our own tools for that.
Is there any spoilers you can possibly give us?
Okay, so there is a spoiler. And so we've had this thing where everyone can live and everyone can die, and it's been part of the staple of the games that we make, because what we wanted to do with this was, like, we wanted death to be something to be frightened of. Most games, you die and of course you get better. Yeah. And that just means then it's an annoyance at best, really, and you've just kind of lost a life and it's fine. But what we want to do with our games, that if you die, that character dies and that's it. The story moves on, and that's, like I say, with the spoke stories, we can do that because, you know, if one character's one spoke, all the rest of the wheel still stays whole. And we can meter out the places where they can die, and it's not just one place. It's like 12 places down the line they can die and die and die and die. So everyone can live, everyone can die, and with this game, obviously, we've thrown in a nice little twist, which is that there are werewolves.
Werewolves. Okay.
So people can get bitten. And of course, when they get bitten, they become dangerous themselves. And not straight away. You don't know whether they have been or they haven't been. That really throws a big twist in it. So it's not just live or die, it's live or die or other.
I'm assuming with that in mind, as the player, you have to make a decision then. Once you start seeing that person kind of turning to the dark side, I'm assuming. So even more decisions are to be made. And is it right that I read this, Will, 186 different outcomes?
Yeah, at least.
At least.
So yeah, I mean, the maths is crazy on this stuff. So there are 100. So we literally, at the end of the game, when you get to the very end, we bring cards up on every single player, dead or alive. I mean, they can be dead in a bush, they can be alive and fine, whatever it is. But every single character in the game has one of these cards. Just so you go, oh right, I know, okay, what the hell happened to them? So, you know, it can be, in fact, I won't give too much away now because they're the end stuff, but we had to write 186 of them for all the different characters, for all, so there's an ending that's this, there's another ending that's that, for that character. There's also a whole bunch of different places where those can happen as well. So it's not just like an Until Dawn where it was always in the lodge at the end. There's a number of different locations where it can end, depending on how you play it through. And then, of course, I mean, and I don't really count this because I think it's a bit of a cheat. If you start to look at the multiples and the way that can be sort of, or, you know, those variants can be put together, it literally goes into the millions then. But that feels disingenuous, to be honest. It doesn't. Those aren't real endings. Those are just combinations that are different.
Yeah, like just different minor outcomes that could take place.
Yeah, but also just it's like 5 people are alive and 1 person's dead, and then 5 people are alive and then 1 person's dead, but they died slightly differently. It's not really a different ending. It's like, you know, so yeah, it's kind of, once you start to get those kind of combinations, then I kind of start turning the thing off for that. Yeah.
But still, so much for fans to experience. Now, Supermassive Games have gotten this reputation for being party experiences where friends play the game together, almost like it is a horror movie night. Was this something you all set out to do, and how has the development of the Quarry been influenced by the fan reaction to games like Until Dawn or the Dark Pictures anthology?
Literally on Until Dawn, we called that a date game, a date movie game. It was that whole thing of playing it together. With this, we've kind of that couch kind of co-op that we had then was was not formalized at all. It was just kind of like you just share the controller backwards and forwards. We've really pushed on the accessibility on the game, just to kind of widen the audience and allow people to play it who aren't massive gamers, but also keep gamers kind of happy. So we have all these accessibility options, and you can just dial them up and dial them down. The length of a QuickTime event, how easy it is to shoot, auto aim, all that sort of stuff. Each person can have a profile and set their own thing up. So you can have somebody who's a big gamer and somebody who's a non-gamer, both play the same game together, and you just set your little profile up. As soon as it's your turn, you hand the controller over, it'll adjust the game for you to adapt to your play style.
So the Quarry, would you say, is like a date game?
Yeah. It's a definite popcorn, sit down on the sofa date game, yeah.
So no more for me personally, Will. I'm going to let you know this right now. No more Netflix and chill. It's going to be the Quarry and chill. So I'm going to hit people up. It must already be like hard to write a game that's so centrally focused on choice, but even doubly so when characters can die at a variety of points in the game, anytime. So can you speak a little to how challenging it is to write games like that, and maybe shed some light on Supermassive's process when it comes to crafting these types of stories, because it's got to be a huge undertaking.
So yeah, it is. I mean, it's a process, definitely. What happens right at the very beginning is I literally sit and write a screenplay, like a movie screenplay, 90-page screenplay, and it's linear and it's the story, just to see if it works, really, because you've got to make sure that it's compelling and it has that when people read it, that they're kind of engaged. Once we've done that, a team of people come in, the narrative design team come in, and they look at every single bit of that story along the way, and they think, okay, what if, when that happened, if that didn't happen and something the opposite happened? And once you start breaking that out, then obviously it generates its own bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. So what if that person didn't die? What if they lived there? Okay, so they've got an entire story to kind of go. We designed a piece of software that's kind of based on Unreal, the Unreal Engine, for ourselves, because we use the Unreal for the final game. We designed this kind of like a narrative design software where we can write script, we can put storyboards in, we have every single element of the game, every single choice. We have a thing called a Boolean, which is where an effect from earlier in the game has set something. So somebody fell over and they got mud on their face. So a Boolean will sit in front of an area where that mud must always be there for that character until they clean it off, mm-hmm. or whatever. All the sort of locomotion and exploration, all of that sits in it. And we can play the whole thing through in storyboard form with kind of like a robo voice. So when we're writing in, we can write this thing and we can hear for timing. So we can play the whole game through way before we even start shooting. And that really, really helps us out. I mean, it takes well over a year to just even do that section.
Now, the Quarry has a fairly star-studded cast featuring the likes of David Arquette, Brenda Song, Ariel Winter, and many more. What was it like working with the cast, and were there any actors that you had in mind for the roles right from the get-go?
Do you know what? Yeah, pretty much all of them. So when we're writing, it starts off as just characters when I very first go through it. Weirdly, so when I very first wrote it, the characters in my head was kind of out of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
That was, I mean, kind of, it was just that sort of like, oh, okay, so that's in my head. Obviously, once it starts to flesh out, and we've got a great writer called Graham Resnick. He's LA-based. He starts writing out the dialogue, and once the dialogue starts coming through, characters just flesh out. Mm-hmm. And at that stage, we start looking through who we would want to play the roles. We kind of just got everyone we wanted. It was one of those really amazing things. We wanted to obviously get a range with teen horror, which is what this is, as opposed to the slightly darker horror, which is the Dark Pictures. This teen horror, we want to have those kind of stereotype characters, kind of the jock, the nerd. They're in every teen horror that you ever see. And we do that on purpose because we want people to feel familiar with it. Then we try and change that a little bit. And obviously, as a player, you can change the character completely. Each character's got two arcs. They've got the kind of the douche arc and the kind of hero arc. And you can change it the way they, who they are, and not just the outcome, but the kind of the journey that they have based on the choices you make. You mentioned you had Scooby-Doo characters in your mind when you were first fleshing this out. And you have David Arquette, Scream alumni. I'm surprised you didn't think of, you could have got two birds with one stone with Matthew Lillard. Right. You could have gotten Shaggy well. And also, I'm just going to put this out there just because I want to do this. If you are ever looking for someone to do a Shaggy voice for you, like I do a good one, man. Like I can totally do it.
Like, I would totally love
That's
to do that.
genius.
I just had to do it. I'm sorry. I know my producers are like, Akeem, this is not, stop doing impressions, stick to the script, but I had to. Now, obviously, the team consists of some huge horror fans, and I know you're a huge horror fan. We were just talking about it. What are some horror movie inspirations that went into the creation for the Quarry?
Sure, loads to be honest. Obviously, there's the teen horror stuff, and again, the teen horror is really specific because it's a super known and very rule-based horror.
I told you this earlier. Like, I was thinking Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway, yeah.
Classic horror franchise. Even more modern. I was looking at the Fear Street trilogy, and it kind of gave me. Those vibes when I heard it was when this game was announced. When I saw it, back in March, I believe. I was like, oh, I'm digging the vibes of this game. And like, again, it's horror based. Like, I was a huge fan of Silent Hill, Resident Evil, still am, of those two franchises. But it's like, if it's horror related, I'm already sold. And you got David Arquette in it, I'm even more sold. Like, you got recognizable faces in this game. Like, I'm in it already.
Yeah.
So.
You say that. So the thing about Fear Street's really important, and like you say, and Sleepaway Camp. But Fear Street was this thing across times, of different times, and we very purposely went down this kind of anachronistic route of it's a modern day thing. It's set contemporary, but it's kind of slightly it's kind of got an 80s vibe about it. But then also everything on the mountain, not on the mountain, on the at the camp and the hills around it and stuff has a very 50s vibe. So everything's Bakelite or kind of enamel or that sort of stuff. And we did that on purpose. So the phones in the older offices and stuff are the old kind of that sort of phone. Yeah. Obviously, there's no cell phone working, and we really wanted to do that. And we've got these DLCs as well, so you can then now change all the characters' costumes to an 80s version.
Oh, nice.
Which are hilarious. And even actually, there's another one coming where there's a 50s version as well.
Yep. Now, this is now the 5th supermassive horror game with The Devil in Me, still slated to release later this year. Do you feel like there are still like a lot more stories to tell in this particular space, or do you see Supermassive branching out into other genres, like maybe, I don't know, RPGs, fantasy?
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, horror is like it's a never-ending. It keeps giving. You can keep going back in. It's not by accident. It's one of the most popular box office things every year, like It or The Conjuring, or that people love it. It's just one of those things. And it's kind of self-generating as well. Horror sits around without getting overly kind of wanky about this. It sort of sits within the zeitgeist of what's going on. So whatever is worrying people at any one time, you can fit horror into that. If you go back to the 50s, horror was always about alien invasion because it was all about invasion fear, and 80s was body horror. So yeah, you can sort of within the zeitgeist, you can kind of find what's scaring people and use that. But no. I love horror, so I'm going to carry on. But Supermassive is a big company. We're making a number of games at the same time, and we're not married to horror by any means. We have other things in the pipeline. I can't tell you exactly what they are because they're still unannounced. But yeah, we're definitely moving through to some other areas.
Big thank you to you for coming out and telling me and everyone watching a little bit more about the Quarry. Now, thank you for giving us the chills, giving us the frights, and some insight on what we can expect from the Quarry, releasing June 10th across all platforms.